The gift card dropped onto the table with a dry clack, lightly hitting the folder of documents I'd spent 3 months preparing. $30, a wrinkled card from a cheap coffee shop. I had just saved the company from a system error that could cost them $2 million annually. And my reward was a piece of cheap plastic. They thought I would silently endure it. But that was before I picked up the phone and called the company's biggest client. My name is Elise Morgan. I'm 34 years old and work as a data analyst at Lansford Freight Solutions, a mid-sized shipping company headquartered in Columbus, Ohio. For the past 5 years, I've been the person who makes sense of the numbers, the one who sees patterns in the chaos of spreadsheets and database entries. Not the most glamorous job, but it pays the bills and occasionally offers an intellectual challenge that makes the monotony worthwhile. My direct supervisor, Grant Delaney, is our operations director. He's what we in the office privately call a friendship hire, pulled in by the CEO from their college days. With a resume that wouldn't have gotten him past the first round of interviews otherwise, Grant has mastered the art of taking credit for others' work while deflecting blame for any failures. He wears designer suits, drives a Tesla, and spends more time networking than actually managing operations. It all began on a Tuesday morning in February. The office heating system was struggling against the Ohio winter, and I was reviewing our quarterly shipping rates when I noticed something odd. A formula discrepancy, small at first glance, but my analyst's instinct told me to dig deeper. What I found was alarming. Our fuel surcharge calculation wasn't properly adjusting with market prices. For some shipments, we were charging too much. For others, far too little. The bigger issue was that volume discounts weren't being applied correctly for our largest customers, even when they clearly met the thresholds. This wasn't just a small error. Projected across all our accounts, it was costing the company nearly $2 million annually. I documented everything meticulously, spending my evenings and weekends going through over 20,000 lines of data. No overtime pay, no formal recognition, just me, my laptop, and endless cups of coffee, driven by professional pride and the satisfaction of solving a complex puzzle. 3 months of extra work, all while maintaining my regular duties. When I finally compiled my findings into a comprehensive report, I scheduled a meeting with Grant. He showed up 15 minutes late, already checking his watch as if my time wasn't valuable. "So what's this about, Elise?" he asked, barely glancing at the thick folder I'd placed in front of him. I explained the issue, walking him through the critical points and the potential savings. I'd even drafted an implementation plan to fix the error with minimal disruption to our operations. Grant flipped through a few pages, his eyes glazing over at the data tables. Then he closed the folder. "Nice catch, Elise," he said, reaching into his pocket. That's when he pulled out the gift card and dropped it on my report. "Next time, go for something that actually matters." The card was for $30 at Columbus Coffee Company, the kind of generic gift you'd give to an acquaintance whose tastes you don't know. It wasn't even enough to cover a week of my coffee consumption during this project. $2 million doesn't matter, I asked, keeping my voice level. Grant shrugged. "Look, we're not going to overhaul our entire billing system over some theoretical loss. The implementation costs alone would eat up any savings." He stood up, signaling the meeting was over. "Put this in the idea bin and get back to your quarterly reports. Those are due tomorrow, right?" I didn't argue. I didn't quit on the spot. I didn't break down in tears in the bathroom later, though I wanted to do all 3. Instead, I took the folder and the gift card back to my desk and began to plan. You see, during my analysis, I'd discovered something I hadn't included in the report. Our primary client, Haverly Equipment Corporation, responsible for 38% of our revenue, had been consistently overcharged. The volume discounts they qualified for weren't being applied, and the fuel surcharges were calculated at rates higher than contractually agreed upon. It wasn't just inefficiency, it was a breach of contract. I hadn't included this specific finding in my report because I wanted to control how this information was handled, call it intuition or experience dealing with Grant. But I knew this discovery needed special handling. That evening, I sent an email to Nina Tran, Haverly's procurement director. We'd met at industry conferences and had occasionally exchanged professional emails, but we weren't close. My message was simple. I had identified some potential discrepancies in the billing between our companies and would appreciate her time for a confidential discussion. Nina responded within an hour, suggesting we meet at a cafe in downtown Columbus that weekend. Saturday morning found me at Brewers' Corner, a quiet cafe far enough from both our offices to avoid running into colleagues. I arrived early, choosing a corner table that offered privacy without appearing secretive. Nina arrived precisely on time, dressed casually but with the sharp attentiveness that had made her successful in her role. "Elise," she said with a firm handshake, "your email was intriguing. What's this about billing discrepancies?" I didn't rush. We ordered coffee first, exchanged pleasantries about the unseasonably cold spring. Then I opened my laptop and turned it toward her. For the past 3 months, I've been analyzing our shipping rate system. I began. What I found affects several clients, but Haverly in particular. I walked her through the data. Fuel surcharges that didn't adjust downward when market prices fell, volume discounts that mysteriously disappeared from invoices despite Haverly clearly meeting the thresholds, weight calculations that consistently rounded up beyond industry standards. Over the past 3 years, I concluded, Haverly has been overcharged approximately $183,742. Nina's face remained composed, but her knuckles whitened around her coffee cup. "And your company is aware of this?" "I submitted a report outlining the systemic issues," I said carefully. The specific impact on Haverly wasn't included. "Why are you showing me this?" Nina asked directly. "And why outside official channels?" It was the question I'd prepared for. Because I believe in transparency and doing right by our clients. I'm not asking for anything in return. I just wanted you to have this information so Haverly can make informed decisions. I handed her a USB drive containing all my findings specific to Haverly's account, along with comparative industry standards documentation. "What happens next is entirely up to you," I added. "I'm just the messenger." Nina studied me for a long moment. "Thank you for your integrity, Elise. I'll need to discuss this with our team." She pocketed the drive and stood. "I appreciate you bringing this to my attention, personally." We parted ways, and I spent the following week continuing my regular work as if nothing had changed. Grant didn't mention my report again, and I didn't bring it up. The gift card remained unused in my desk drawer. Exactly 7 days after my meeting with Nina, our CEO called an emergency all-company meeting. The atmosphere was tense as we filed into the conference room. Grant was already seated at the front, his usual confident smirk replaced by a tight-lipped grimace. The CEO, Elizabeth Harmon, didn't waste time with pleasantries. "As of this morning, Haverly Equipment Corporation has terminated their contract with us, effective immediately." A shocked murmur rippled through the room. "Furthermore," she continued, "they've cited systematic billing irregularities as their reason for termination. They've provided extensive documentation and are considering legal action." The room fell silent. I kept my expression neutral, though I could feel Grant's eyes burning into me from across the room. "That's not all," Elizabeth added. 3 other clients, Westfield Manufacturing, Apex Logistics, and TDK Systems, have also requested comprehensive billing audits and have suspended new shipments pending the results. Those 3 companies, along with Haverly, represented nearly 70% of our annual revenue. The meeting ended with assurances that the company would investigate thoroughly and work to restore client relationships. As people filed out in stunned silence, Elizabeth's assistant approached me. "Ms. Harmon would like to see you in her office immediately," she said quietly. When I arrived at the CEO's office, I found not just Elizabeth, but also Grant, our legal counsel, Jennifer Reeves, and the CFO, Martin Chen. On the conference table sat my report, the one I'd given to Grant, still in the same folder, looking untouched. "Please sit down, Elise," Elizabeth said, her tone unreadable. "We have much to discuss." I took the only empty chair, directly across from Grant, whose face had turned an alarming shade of red. "Is this your report?" Elizabeth asked, tapping the folder. Yes, I answered simply. And did you meet with Nina Tran from Haverly last weekend? I nodded. I did. Grant leaned forward. You went behind my back to our biggest client? Do you realize what you've done? Elizabeth raised a hand to silence him. Grant, you'll have your turn. She turned back to me. Elise, please explain why you took this action. I maintained my composure. 3 months ago, I identified serious billing errors in our system. I documented everything in that report and presented it to Grant last week. I gestured to the folder. The implementation plan on page 42 would have fixed the issues with minimal disruption. And what was the response to your report? Elizabeth asked. I reached into my bag and placed the coffee shop gift card on the table. I was told to go for something that actually matters next time. The CFO picked up the gift card, examined it, then placed it back on the table with a look of disbelief. So you went to Haverly out of spite? Grant accused. No, I replied evenly. I went to Haverly because they were being systematically overcharged in violation of our contract. I provided them with accurate information that they had every right to know. I turned to Elizabeth. I followed the chain of command first. When that failed, I did what I believed was ethically correct. Jennifer, the legal counsel, spoke up. Did you ask Haverly for anything in return for this information? A job, perhaps? Compensation? Nothing, I said firmly. I asked for nothing, suggested nothing, and expected nothing. I simply presented the facts. The room fell silent as Elizabeth opened the folder and began reading the executive summary. Minutes passed as she flipped through the pages, occasionally asking Martin to verify certain calculations. Finally, she looked up. This report is thorough, accurate, and should have been acted upon immediately. She stated, the implementation plan is sensible and could have prevented this entire situation. She turned to Grant. Did you read this report when Elise gave it to you? Grant shifted uncomfortably. I skimmed it. It seemed theoretical and overly complex. It's neither theoretical nor complex. Martin interrupted, looking up from the financial projections. It's straightforward and alarming. We've been hemorrhaging money and overcharging our biggest clients. This should have been your highest priority. Elizabeth stood up. Here's what's going to happen. Elise, you will lead our response team to meet with all affected clients, starting with Haverly. You have my full authority to negotiate restitution and contract amendments. She turned to Grant. You are suspended pending a full review of your performance. Please clear your desk and surrender your access cards before leaving today. Grant's face went from red to white. You can't be serious. She deliberately sabotaged. She did her job, Elizabeth cut in. You did not. That's all for now. As the meeting adjourned, I gathered my things, avoiding Grant's glare. Just as I reached the door, Elizabeth called me back. That was a risky move, Elise, she said when we were alone. You could have handled this differently. I tried the proper channels first, I reminded her. She nodded slowly. So you did. We'll speak more after your meeting with Haverly. And Elise, don't forget your gift card. I left it on the table. Consider it my contribution to the company coffee fund. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. I led a team of 4, including Martin from finance and Jennifer from legal, in meetings with each affected client. We started with Haverly, where I again faced Nina Tran, this time with her entire executive team. I didn't make excuses or shift blame. I presented our findings, acknowledged the errors, offered full restitution plus interest, and outlined the new systems we were implementing to ensure transparency moving forward. Most importantly, I listened to their concerns and answered their questions honestly, even when the answers weren't flattering to Lansford. Why should we trust Lansford now? Haverly's CEO asked bluntly at the end of our presentation. I gestured to the documents we'd provided. You shouldn't trust blindly. That's why we're proposing quarterly audit rights, open book policies on all calculations, and a contractual commitment to pass along any identified discrepancies within 15 days, with automatic penalties if we fail to do so. I met his gaze directly. We're not asking for trust. We're offering verification. It worked. Haverly agreed to a new contract, albeit with stricter terms and heightened oversight. Westfield and Apex followed suit. Only TDK walked away permanently, having already been courted by a competitor. When the dust settled, Elizabeth called me into her office again. This time, the atmosphere was considerably lighter. "You've done exceptional work, Elise," she began. "You identified a critical problem, and when ignored, you took a principled stand. Then you helped us rebuild from the crisis." She slid a document across the desk. "We'd like to create a new position, Director of Compliance and Client Relations. The role reports directly to me, with a 40% salary increase and options in the company." I looked at the offer letter. The compensation was more than fair, and the responsibilities aligned with my strengths. Still, I didn't sign immediately. "I'd like the weekend to consider it," I said. Elizabeth looked surprised but nodded. "Of course, take the time you need." That weekend, I weighed my options carefully. The promotion was attractive, but could I trust a company that had allowed such issues to fester? On the other hand, Elizabeth had taken decisive action once the problems came to light. Perhaps with proper leadership, real change was possible. By Monday morning, I'd made my decision. I accepted the position with one condition. I wanted to build my own team, selecting individuals who demonstrated both technical competence and ethical judgment. Elizabeth agreed, and my new role began immediately. I moved to a corner office, ironically, Grant's former space, and started implementing the compliance systems I'd envisioned. Speaking of Grant, his departure wasn't as clean as I'd hoped. It began with late-night emails, first pleading for me to fix this misunderstanding, then becoming increasingly threatening. When I didn't respond, he began spreading rumors that I had fabricated the billing issues to advance my career. I didn't dignify the accusations with a response. The data spoke for itself, and my new systems were already showing positive results. The quarterly audit we'd promised Haverly revealed additional minor issues, which we promptly corrected and disclosed, building credibility through transparency. 3 months into my new role, Jennifer from legal called me into her office. "Grant is suing you personally for defamation and tortious interference. He's seeking $1.5 million in damages." I felt a momentary panic but kept my expression neutral. "On what grounds?" "He claims you deliberately misrepresented the billing issues and targeted him specifically to take his position." She shook her head. "It's thin, but lawsuits don't need to be strong to be disruptive." "How should I proceed?" "The company will cover your legal expenses," she assured me. "We stand behind you fully. Just continue doing your job and let us handle the legal response." The lawsuit dragged on for months, consuming time and emotional energy I would have preferred to direct elsewhere. The discovery process was particularly grueling, requiring me to turn over emails, notes, and even personal calendar entries. But the discovery process cut both ways. Grant's personal emails revealed messages to friends boasting about how he sidelined reports that would require fixing old mistakes. In one particularly damning exchange, he wrote about deliberately ignoring compliance issues because addressing them would expose previous errors made under his watch. Faced with this evidence, Grant's attorneys proposed a settlement. They would drop the case if I signed a non-disclosure agreement about the whole affair. I refused. "I want a public retraction and apology." I insisted to our legal team, no confidentiality clauses, no sealed records. It took another month of legal maneuvering, but eventually, Grant capitulated. He issued a public apology acknowledging that my findings were accurate and his accusations were unfounded. The case was dismissed with prejudice, meaning he couldn't refile the same claims. 6 months after my promotion, I'd established a functioning compliance department, rebuilt relationships with our key clients, and even attracted new business based on our reformed practices. I had my own office, a team of dedicated analysts, and a growing reputation in the industry for integrity and precision. Then Elizabeth announced her resignation. After 12 years as CEO, she was moving to a larger company in California. The board initiated a search for her replacement, and my name appeared on the shortlist of internal candidates. The interview process was rigorous. I presented my vision for Lansford's future, emphasizing transparency, technological innovation, and ethical business practices. The feedback seemed positive, but ultimately, the board selected Ronald Griffith, an external candidate with 20 years of executive experience in the logistics industry. I wasn't devastated. The CEO role would have taken me further from the analytical work I enjoyed, pushing me into politics and investor relations. I congratulated Ronald sincerely and offered my full support during his transition. 2 weeks after Ronald's appointment, I received an unexpected lunch invitation from Nina Tran. We met at an upscale restaurant downtown, and after brief pleasantries, she revealed the purpose of the meeting. Haverly is creating a new position, Chief Integrity Officer. She explained. The role would oversee compliance, ethics, and client advocacy across all our divisions. After working with you these past months, our board believes you would be the ideal candidate. The offer included a salary double my current one, a more comprehensive benefits package, and a corporate culture that had demonstrated its commitment to ethical practices. I'm honored, I said, genuinely surprised. But why me? Surely there are candidates with more executive experience. Nina smiled. Experience can be acquired. Integrity and courage are innate. You demonstrated both when you risked your position to do the right thing. She slid a formal offer letter across the table. We value those qualities above all else. I gave my notice to Lansford the following day. Ronald tried to counter-offer, but we both knew it wasn't just about the money. It was about finding an environment that aligned with my values. On my last day, I cleared out my office, said goodbye to my team, and walked through the building one final time. As I passed my old desk, I opened the drawer where I'd kept that $30 gift card, still unused after all these months. I left it there as I walked out, a small reminder that my value was never determined by how others chose to recognize it. My first day at Haverly began with a company-wide introduction from the CEO himself, who emphasized that my role was not just about preventing problems, but about building a culture where integrity was celebrated and rewarded. As I settled into my new office, larger than the one at Lansford, with a view of the Columbus skyline, Nina stopped by. Happy with your decision? She asked, leaning against the doorframe. I smiled, thinking about the journey that had brought me here. Absolutely, though I never expected a coffee shop gift card would change the course of my career. Nina laughed. Sometimes the smallest gestures reveal the biggest truths. She straightened up to leave. Meeting in 30 minutes to introduce you to your team. Don't be late. As she left, I turned to my computer and opened a new document. At the top, I typed a reminder to myself. Your value isn't determined by others' recognition. It's determined by your actions when that recognition fails. Then I saved the file, closed it, and went to meet the people who would help me build something better than what I had left behind. From a $30 coffee card to a corner office with a view, not because I schemed or backstabbed, but because when faced with a choice between easy comfort and difficult integrity, I chose the harder path. And somehow, that made all the difference. 6 months into my role at Haverly, I received an Industry Leadership Award for Corporate Ethics Innovation. As I stood at the podium, looking out at a room full of professionals, including several former Lansford colleagues, I thought about how differently things might have gone had I simply accepted that gift card and remained silent. The plaque now sits on my desk, not as a trophy, but as a reminder that integrity isn't just a personal virtue. It can become a professional asset when you refuse to compromise it. Sometimes at night, I still dream about those 20,000 rows of data and the patterns I found hidden within them. But I no longer wake up anxious. Instead, I feel a quiet confidence that comes from knowing your worth isn't measured in gift cards or even paychecks, but in the courage to stand by your principles when they're tested. And if you're wondering what happened to Grant, last I heard, he was working for a much smaller logistics company in Indiana. We occasionally cross paths at industry events, where he makes a point of avoiding eye contact. That's fine by me. Some chapters are better left closed. As for Lansford, they've actually thrived under Ronald's leadership. He implemented many of the changes I had proposed, giving proper credit to the original work. We now have a respectful professional relationship, occasionally collaborating on industry standards committees. Life has a strange way of sorting things out when you give it time. That $30 gift card, meant as a dismissal, ultimately became the catalyst for the most significant professional growth of my career, not because of its monetary value, but because of how it clarified what I would and wouldn't accept in recognition of my worth. If there's a lesson here, perhaps it's this. When someone undervalues your contribution, you have more options than silent acceptance or angry departure. Sometimes, the most powerful response is to simply stand your ground and let the truth speak for itself. And sometimes, just sometimes, the universe has a way of balancing the scales when you have the patience to let it work. I still drink coffee, by the way, but these days, I buy it myself.